Next up is Laurie O'Donnell. Laurie is the Director of Learning and Technology at Learning and Teaching Scotland. His current remit includes responsibility for world-leading Glow School's intranet program, developing innovative practice, including new technologies for learning. And the Scottish Learning Festival, of course, those of you who attended that recently. I unfortunately couldn't go because of some illness, but apparently everyone that told me it was fantastic, and I was really gutted that I couldn't go. He sees his role as an enabler of educational change and is focused on improving outcomes for Scotland's children and young people. Laurie is passionate, and I've got to know Laurie recently over the last year or so, and he's very passionate about learning and the supporting role of technology in education. He joined LTS in 2001 to take up the post of Head of Future Learning and Teaching, having previously been ICT Education Advisor for Dundee City Council. Laurie's professional background is in secondary teaching and school management. He was recently honoured by the George Lucas Educational Foundation as one of Utopia's magazine's prestigious Global 6 for 2008. He was even more honoured when his daughter sent a text to all her friends claiming that her dad was a global hero. Laurie O'Donnell.
Thank you, dear. Thank you. Okay. Good afternoon. Just start off by just saying a couple of things about the organisation I work for, because Scottish organisation funded by the government in Scotland, and it's a kind of strange organisation because it's got curriculum 3 to 18, so we're moving towards a single curriculum right the way through schooling, learning and teaching strategies, teacher CPD, and also technology. So technology sits in a context. And I suppose in my professional life, I'm kind of where these two worlds, the very slow-moving world of schooling meets the very, very fast-moving world of technology. And I suppose that somewhere in that interface is the space that I live in, I occupy. And it's a really fascinating place to be. I'm going to spent a lot of time kind of thinking about the title of this talk, and I started off putting the word philosophy in, and I then changed it to theory, but I've kind of reverted back to philosophy. I think there is something in education which is about philosophy. It's about the bigger picture, and I'm going to try and spend half an hour or so speaking about the bigger picture, and in the course of that, hopefully engage you in a conversation about it. So, philosophy into practice. I'm going to have a look at two different kind of mindsets, if you like, philosophies. I'm going to have a look at what we've done. Philosophy B is the one that I'm going to say is the one I'm kind of signed up to, and I think my organisation signed up to. I'm going to say a little bit about how some of that might look in practice. And then what other factors help you be successful, and then take some questions. And in fact, I'll probably intersperse with some questions. So here's philosophy A, which you might be kind of familiar with, kind of view of education that it's generally broken. Right? We've got a kind of broken education system. And interestingly, usually associated with that kind of idea that the education system's broken is you can fix it. And in brackets, the extreme version of this model is you can fix it quickly, and I should put in brackets again, by throwing lots of money at it and throwing a pile of technology at it. So you'll somehow fix the education system. Might seem recognisable. Second point, technology drives change. It's one of the big debates we have. What's the role of technology? I think people drive change. But there's a big sense that you put technology in, you get change. Teachers, well, they're just another problem that needs to be fixed. They need to be reprogrammed, sorted. They're what's wrong. There's the children on one side who are all connected, they know what to do, and there's the teachers who are just not switched on, and we need to fix that problem. Learners, well, they're the future workforce, of course, so education's all about skilling them up to get these jobs in the 21st century. Innovation, well, let's just have lots of innovation, and I've kind of characterised that as let 1,000 projects flourish. And the bit that ... after that is then, after a few years, when the money runs out or the inspirational leader moves on, you're left pretty much where you started. Success is, well, input targets. How many computers, how much bandwidth, how many people you've got connected, and of course, raising that very narrow measure of success in schooling attainment. Curriculum, well, bottom line of curriculum is you can't trust the teachers, so you've got to make sure it's all there, it's on paper, and the teachers just kind of follow the script. And you've got to work on the script, that's the important thing, rather than working on the teachers. So there's philosophy A. Is that recognisable, or is that a bit too much of a caricature? It's a little bit of a caricature, but I think it's illustrative of a mindset, of a way of thinking about education, about technology, about teachers, about this whole space that we occupy. Let me posit an alternative. Okay, so you can't... education is the way that a society invests in its future. I don't think you'll find any country in the world, I see Stephen Heppel sitting across there in the corner, travels the world, you won't find one country in the world that isn't investing in education or trying to invest in education, because even the most stupid government, and we have had a few of those, still see education as being a long-term investment. If you take a long-term view, then if there's something wrong with it, you can't fix it quickly overnight. You've got to take a long-term strategic approach. I mentioned about technology, the view that technology drives change. I think people drive change. In fact, I'm not even sure if I like that word change. People change things to make the world better. Like teachers resist some changes because they don't make education better, they make it worse. So what's the role of technology? Well, it helps enable some of the positive changes. We've heard from the earlier speakers some of the things that technology can do. It might help accelerate some of the changes, but it doesn't drive the change. If you think that technology drives change, I think you've got the wrong end of the stick, certainly in education. Teachers, well, I think fundamental to education is enhancing the role of the teacher. If you want to have a successful education system, schooling system, and I'm very much talking about schooling. I'm not saying all learning and all education takes place in schools. But in schooling, if you want successful schools, you need highly professional teachers who are able to make judgments based on their knowledge, their experience, the relationships of the other teachers, their understanding of research. That's where you've got to invest. Teachers aren't broken. Teachers just need to be given a bit more freedom, a bit more support, a bit more help, and the ability to connect with other teachers, to be part of a community of practice. Learners, well, you know, I've got 2 children, and my hope is that school gives them a lot more than just the skills to be workers. The curriculum in Scotland has got 4 capacities. It's an outcomes-based curriculum. What do we want to achieve? Being a worker is only one part of our life. And an education system that's all skills-driven is a narrow education, and it's one that I'm certainly not signed up to. I mentioned about curriculum. Curriculum is guidance rather than a script for teachers. Curriculum is a structure that teachers then populate with meaningful learning experiences. Not a kind of detailed list of stuff you've got to learn, but an overall structure that's coherent and makes sense and articulates and brings knowledge together, rather than seeing knowledge in separate boxes. It says, well, the real interesting thing about knowledge is that the contexts and the relationships that bring knowledge together in meaningful ways. And of course, a curriculum designed like that will be inherently motivating. You won't need to bring in any gadgets or gizmos, because that curriculum is designed around the interests and needs of the learner. Innovation, well, you know, the opposite to let 1,000 projects flourish is don't fund anything unless you can scale it up. You know, if it only works in one school because of one inspirational head teacher or one relationship with a company who've put in a lot of money, forget it. Because what you're doing is you're building in failure into the system. So if it doesn't scale up and it's not sustainable, then it's meaningless innovation, other than on the margins of proof of concept. The big stuff has got to work across. Well, in Scotland, 3,000 schools. That's what success, that's what innovation looks like to me. It means you take it on a small scale and you scale it up, and it's for every young person in the country. And of course, overall success, much wider, much longer term benefits. I was in Finland a few years ago, and I had a really interesting conversation with a guy who at that time was running the Finnish education system. And Finland don't have any exams, so they've not got kind of leaving certificates. Well, they've got leaving certificates to say that you've completed your secondary education, but don't have an exam system. And universities, if they want to recruit young people at university, they set entry exams. Employers do the same sort of stuff. And I asked this guy, head of education in Finland, how do you measure success? And he said, I thought very interestingly, how safe did you feel walking around the streets of Helsinki? How many people do you send to prison in Scotland? How many startup businesses do you have? How happy are your people? How healthy? What's the longevity? These are the success factors of an education system. Not, well, 2% increase in attainment or 1.5% more stay on at school. So we get to get these wider benefits. These are the wider benefits of education. That's why education is so important. That's why education is the investment in our future. So let me just pause there and see if anyone wants to ask me a question or pose a challenge. So, anyone want to kind of... Come on, be interactive. Oh, question is fun. Fantastic. Great.
Unexpected intervention. Thanks for the warning, Laurie.
We've
got a microphone over
want
here,
a microphone down here?
We've got Mark, and then we'll come back to you if that's okay.
Thanks. Anyone at the back want to ask a question?
Hi, good morning. Thank you.
Okay.
One common theme, or lack of theme, I've noticed is we seem to be very Anglo-Saxon specific, very Western-oriented.
Yeah.
But can we apply all this to, let's say, other cultures which are not necessarily fully represented here?
Yeah.
Like from an Islamic perspective or a Buddhist perspective?
Okay. Right, okay. I wouldn't say I'm particularly Anglo-Saxon in my approach, but I think I know what you mean.
Challenge. You asked for a challenge.
Yeah, I know. Like what you've got is like UK's got 4 education systems that are different, but they've got enough in common that would set them apart from education systems elsewhere. And I think, well, you know, would that apply? Is that kind of cross-cultural? You know, I would say yes. I would say, you know, pretty much any country in the world, you'd want to invest in your teachers, right? Anywhere in the world, I think you'd want to. The aspiration of any parent or any society or a society in general would be that your learners are more than just workers. You want citizens. You want people who are community activists. You want good parents. You want people who take responsibility for their own health. So being a worker isn't enough. That's not success. Yeah, I think in terms of curriculum and innovation, I think these things apply as well. Technology, I just think if you think technology and anyone thinks technology drives change in itself, I think that's just bad thinking. I think if you look at the evidence, look at the research, it will say to you, no, it's not the case. And people who try and change education by sticking technology into classrooms, you know, X number of computers, and think they can put a broadband connection to a school and improve education. I think anywhere in the world, that's better. That's better thinking. It might not be completely right, But it's better thinking than that thinking, cross-culturally, I would say. Does anyone want to disagree?
Okay.
Yeah. Great, good. Like questions.
Okay, can you hear me now? Yep.
Yeah, hear you fine.
I love Philosophy B. I think it's awesome. My only concern is being a cynic.
Yeah.
Is that the first thing that's going to happen with something like innovation, got to be scalable and sustainable, is that people are going to say, well, what are you going to measure scalability and how are you going to measure sustainability, and who's going to pay for sustainability beyond the current government? This is a constant problem. Australia has had exactly this idea of producing education environments which are associated with industry players, and that industry players invest in programs and in research. And what happens is that after a while, the researchers who refuse point blank to talk to the industry people because of the fact that the industry people are only interested in their bottom line, and the industry people get frustrated with the researchers because they're not actually doing what they've asked them to do. They're saying, oh, are we asking the right questions yet? This is the constant problem. How do you measure scalability, sustainability? How do you measure appropriate support for teachers?
Well, so that's a fabulous question. I think you start off by, well, looking backwards. Like you've got experience of some stuff which was innovative and it led to nothing, or it came to an end. So I would hope one of the features of an educated person is that you learn from mistakes. You know, like you don't, if you're going to make mistakes, try and make new mistakes. Right? Don't make the mistakes of the past. So you'd write off anything that's got short-term funding, anything that needs a level of investment which you know is never going to become available for the rest of your schools. You should say, well, we're wasting our time. That's not any good. We might do that as a small scale, just get some ideas and develop some stuff, but that's not innovation. For me, I'm defining innovation as something you can take from a school or a classroom and you can spread it across the system. Add it to every teacher's repertoire. Make it available to every learner. That's innovation for me. The rest is kind of playing about. Let's try out this or try out that, and then let's go away and do something else because we're a bit fed up now. So I think fundamentally what you need to do is you need to start at the beginning and say education is a long-term investment in the future of your country through your young people. So who should pay for that? Heck, the government should pay for that. I don't know if you've been reading the newspapers recently, but they seem to have found several billions of pounds to do one thing, and if we go to war, we seem to be able to find several billions of pounds to do that, but we don't seem to be able to find the much smaller sum of money which would allow us to really have, like my job in Scotland is to give us a world-class education system. To do that, you need money, and the money must come from the government. And part of having an educated population is you should be prepared to pay for that through your taxes. So that's how you get it. And it's a moral argument, it's a philosophical argument, but it's a highly political argument. I think industry's got a role. Yeah, absolutely. You know, the question is, should it come from industry? I think yes. But if industry signed up to this, then they're not signed up to a 2-year project where they get their brand on the school website, or they get that's not any good. So if you find an industry partner who says, we're in this for the long term, hey, we're going to still be here in 10, 15 years' time, then hey, great. You've got something that I think is scalable.
Another challenge? The
Any more
gentleman right at the back. I want to get some people from the back row because they haven't been too involved there. Get all the shy ones.
Okay. Now, it seems to me that education is primarily driven by assessment at the moment. The example I give, I know you're Scottish, but is from England, that at the end of primary school, they do their SATs, and they do well, and then it seems when they go into secondary school, there's a decline. But this is because they've been being taught to the assessment and not the wider knowledge and skills and so on that they should be taking with them into high school.
Yeah.
So all this is fine, but only if you can do something about the nature of assessment, what politicians want of assessment, and how are you going to address that point?
Yeah, okay. Well, hey, we're back into philosophy, aren't we, you know? Success is input targets and improving attainment. If that's what success in your system looks like, then, hey, that's what you will measure. You will measure incremental changes in maths and literacy and scientific knowledge. That's what you get. So you're absolutely right. To turn philosophy B into reality, you need to change your view of what is success. In Scotland, we don't have quite the same constraints that there are elsewhere. In the UK, we don't have SATs, for example. My children are both now at secondary school, but when they were in primary school, they did sit national tests in maths and language, but they sat them when they were ready. And the teacher's judgment was more important than what they got in any written test. One of the problems with like Scottish primary schools are probably world class. Scottish secondary schools probably aren't, and they probably aren't because the curriculum is too much driven by the examinations at the end of the time. So the curriculum gets distorted by teachers teaching to a very narrow spectrum of knowledge, what we can assess through a written examination. So absolutely, the question is a great question, and if we really want to put philosophy B into practice, then you need to throw out lots of what we currently have in terms of qualifications and exams.
Gentleman in the black shirt.
Yeah. No.
It's on there. Steve Wheeler from University of Plymouth.
Hiya.
Seems to me that the curriculum might be broken, needing fixing, because the number of teachers I talk to, they say, look, we haven't got the time, we haven't got the energy to do anything new, to do anything innovative with technology. Yeah. What would your suggestions or answers be to that?
Absolutely. We're currently revamping our curriculum in Scotland. One of the problems you've got with schooling is that there's a kind of false idea that you can do all in the age 3 to 18. You can get all your learning in there, so we pack the curriculum full of stuff. And secondary schools in particular are full of interest groups who want their bit of knowledge on the curriculum. So the historians, the geographers, the physicists, the literature teachers, and there's all the pressure coming in. They want the media studies want in, and so all the time you're building more and more and more siloed curriculum, and of course there isn't enough time. And if you've got a highly scripted curriculum, then the teachers are right down to detail. So the way out of that is you start moving up the way. You look at some broader tasks, see what knowledge. But the main thing is you have a sense that education and learning doesn't stop when you leave school.
Still stuck in the just-in-case scenario.
Yeah, that's right. Just in case you need calculus and algebra and trigonometry. And got another one here.
We were in a bit of a line.
Oh, okay, right, okay.
Are you happy to carry on in this intervention?
Yeah.
Yep.
Questions are much better, yeah.
Good, okay.
Changing the format. I had another 223 slides, but I had.
Your philosophies seem generational or chronological. Is there a C? Do you see any changes from B to a C?
Definitely, yeah. I think one way to look at it is, here's kind of what we used to think, right? Here's what we kind of currently think, and C would be, well, we've tried and tested some of this stuff and put some of it into practice, and actually some of that thinking isn't right. So yeah, absolutely. This is a kind of evolutionary process of improving our conception of education and what works. So it's speculative theorizing based on practice. So yeah, great question. Yeah, Mark.
Okay. I'm going to challenge in one sense that I think there's a sense you could say philosophies A and B are part of the same. They're just variations on the same theme.
Agreed.
Because they're both top-down.
They are.
And so another way to look at this would say, well, is there another direction, A, X, Y, and Z, that says what would education look like bottoms up for the kids to decide? Could you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question, yeah. I suppose that I'm speaking kind of from my role. So my role, I sit in an organisation funded by the government. So there's a little bit of, I can't escape from the fact there's a little bit of top.
You are the top.
There's a little bit of top down there. But I actually think that to get the system working properly, it's where top down and bottom up meet. So, and I did try and say at the beginning, I'm kind of talking about the schooling bit of things, which is a very, very small part of the learning landscape. And I'm also interested in what's happening in formal learning, what's happening. One of the things that's happened with schooling is schooling annexed individual responsibility for learning, because what matters was getting qualifications. When I was a kid, the community I grew up in, the most educated people in the community were miners, and they were self-educated. They were from an autodidactic tradition. They'd read the classics of literature. They could have analysed the banking crisis better than most of the journalists in the Financial Times, because they'd read Karl Marx. So we need to capture some of that again. We need to say to people, schooling is a kind of formalised structure. And what's interesting is where it meets the learning that happens outside of school. But much of the learning outside of school is more important, and will have much greater longevity in terms of people's life experiences. So again, it's a fantastic question.
James.
James Clay from Gloucestershire College. You've got an empty row there. I presume that's where you would put assessment.
Could have put assessment in there. Yeah.
Because it's, we can do all these wonderful things. We can get our students to make videos. We can get them to use Twitter. We can get them to use JIQ. We can get them to use YouTube. We can get them to do it through the medium of dance. Mm-hmm. But what's the point when they then have to sit down for 3 hours in June and write 4 essays using a pen and paper? Yeah. Isn't it that philosophy B is almost irrelevant if we don't change the assessment model?
I had that question earlier. I completely agree with that. This is predicated on some other changes that happen in the system. I left a blank row exactly because I thought, hey, I was trying to give an indication that this isn't in any way meant to be a comprehensive list. This is some kind of thoughts, but you can take the last row as whatever the bee in your bonnet is that you would want to add in there. So if it's assessment, yeah, get assessment in there. It might be the role of the informal learning, could be whatever you want.
But I suppose which a lot of people here may remember, is that we're not in charge of assessment. It's the examining bodies, it's the exam boards. Wow. An individual institution or an individual member of staff does not have the power to change assessment.
Do we have somebody from one of the examination boards? Yeah, we have Bob Penrose at the back here. Could someone from the examination boards respond, please?
I'll go and sit in the audience now.
Well done, you set up a fire.
Yeah.
Can you introduce yourself to everyone that doesn't know you?
Yeah, that's unfortunately a current blame. We actually apply what we're told to apply. And I think it's a very difficult concept, but you have to realise that all of that assessment comes from politicians, from DCSF, and then through QCA. And if you talk to any of my other awarding body colleagues that are here, you'll find that we're equally frustrated with the whole system, in that we don't have a great deal of leeway. What we do is apply basically what we're told from on high. And a lot of the time we try to bring in slightly innovative things, and we have to go through such a convoluted process that it makes them almost impossible. And our colleagues spend the vast majority of the time applying nationally agreed criteria that have been written from on high. And that's a very difficult thing to do. And I would love to be able to disband all of us, all our awarding bodies, and get to a point where we actually allow learners to learn. We don't have, I think the quote was, you can't teach people to learn. You create an environment where they're allowed to learn. And what I would love to see is almost a summary of what you're saying. We create an environment where students are allowed to learn irrespective of their teachers, and the whole role of a teacher and the nature of the buildings and the resources changes entirely, because everything you hear about the technology and how students are behaving, what Dana said, all the other speakers, we're not providing them with the system that they need to learn. And that's a huge long-term change. I don't know if Laurie's got anything to say about that, but that whole role needs to be rethought. And to blame awarding bodies is is very, very hard. We can't do much. You need to go higher up than us. And we're doing it on your behalf from time to time as well.
Yeah. No, I think that's very well put. Maybe just kind of comment on that. Yeah, I think it's wrong to blame. It's part of the legacy. It's what we've inherited a system which fundamentally doesn't trust teachers' judgment. So it's always seeking external kind of validation of how is a learner performing. We've also allowed the school secondary curriculum to be basically hijacked by the universities, to some extent employers, but mainly by the universities. We had the OECD in to review Scottish education last year, 2007, and the guy who led the review, Professor Richard Tees from the University of Melbourne, he said something along the lines of that universities use exams, school exams, to substitute the production of excellence for the prediction of excellence. So what they're doing is they're using schools to get the best, what they think are going to be the best students. But they don't need to teach them because they've got the best. They use the exam system as a predictor. You're going to get a good degree here, rather than we're going to work hard with you and teach you and spend a lot of time with you and expose you to kind of all kinds of new knowledge and experience, and you're going to become an excellent learner, and you're going to go on and do something with your life. So we've allowed that to happen, and it's kind of hard to unravel that. So, but you know, this was my last slide. So it was basically saying you can't do it just with having a philosophy. You do need a little bit of help. Politicians are fundamental to this. You need to have politicians who don't see education as being able to be don't see it as being broken, and don't see it as being able to be fixed quickly. They need to commit to the long term and start to make some brave decisions. They need to be advised by civil servants who get the big picture, aren't covering their backsides all the time, and are thinking about managing risk. There is no risk-free education system. Okay? Doing nothing is probably the biggest risk of all. Doing something is risky. Let's try and do the right things, make the right kind of changes for the future. Talked earlier about funding. If you've not got secure funding, you can't innovate, you can't change. If things are based on short-term projects with a start date and end date, some very narrow outputs, then you won't achieve anything. You need to go longer term, you need to have programs which are scalable. You need great people in education. I think we've got great people in education. Competent, passionate, grounded. They need to know their stuff. It's not just airy-fairy ideas. This is solid, research-based, evidence-based ideas which will transform our education system for the better. Doing the right things for the right reasons. I think that's fundamental. We've got far too much time. People who the motivation is not the right motivation. They're trying to avoid risk. They're trying to kind of hide, I suppose. Resilience. This is the journey of transforming education is one in which there'll be a lot of setbacks, and we need to kind of stick with it over time. This is not 1 year, 2 year. This is generational change, and yeah, but hard work and a lot of luck as well. You need to be lucky in this, but you get lucky by, I think, doing the right things for the right reasons. So how am I doing for time, Graham?
You're doing fine. You've got time for two
time
or three
for questions.
Yeah. I know that you still have a question, Aidan. And also, after Aidan, I'd like to get some questions from the back, because you guys have been very quiet. So, okay, the gentleman there after Aidan. So Aidan, you go first, and then the gentleman that was waving.
From Stelges.
Hi.
Laurie, I'd just like to challenge you. If you use Stephen's earlier system, I think what you've just presented is a sort of benevolent dictatorship. Talking about Finland and supporting startups, there's a certain sort of illogicality about you deciding what's right as a whole system, which I'd suggest is probably predicated on the size of the Scottish education system.
Yeah.
And a critic might say, are you not reverse engineering your defence of some of the large purchasing decisions you've made in Scotland, which whilst they might be very successful and might end up being the right decisions, I think you need to see innovation happening in small ways as well. So perhaps what you're actually suggesting is there's some sort of state, if you're being positive about it, some sort of state pump priming of small innovation, rather than it being industry-led. Maybe it's state with industry, with universities. And there's a different system where innovation is actually nurtured by a benevolent dictatorship, rather than you applying what you might suggest other people have tried and got wrong before, and you've waited, your timing's been very good, and you've decided what's right for Scotland.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of really good points in there. I think one very important point is the question of scale. You know, we're a small country, 5.1 million people, so I think you can do things with 5.1 million people that you can't do with 60 million people or 250 million people. I think that's for sure. Benevolent dictatorship. Well, I don't think so. I think we live in a very kind of. I'm subject to all kinds of democratic pressures. So the kind of the big decisions that we've made have tended to be made collaboratively. So, for example, our biggest project, the GLOW National Schools Intranet, has been done collaboratively with 32 local authorities. So it's not imposed on them. They opt in, they sign up for it, and its design has been very much by local authority staff. So it's benign dictatorship. I don't think so. I would contest that. In terms of innovation, I suppose I have been in education for pretty much my whole adult life, and I've been involved in so many small-scale, innovative projects that have gone nowhere, that over time you just get frustrated. So it's not my job to stop small-scale, innovative projects. And if schools are working with companies and they're doing interesting stuff, and the teachers and the learners and the parents and the community are benefiting from that project, great. I think that's highly commendable, but it's back to scalability and sustainability for me. That's where I'm interested. I want innovation that benefits all 700,000 learners in Scotland. I want innovation that benefits all 53,000 teachers. I want innovation that touches every community, whether they're remote island or the centre of Glasgow. And so I don't want to stop the other kind of innovation, but the stuff that moves me and the stuff that I think over time really makes a difference is big. So.
Wait, time for short question and a short answer. There was a gentleman at the back. I don't know whether you got a mic. Yes, the gentleman. Yeah, so.
Maybe this is a bit naive, but why are students not on the list there?
Yeah, they could be. Yeah, quite easily. Students, like I call students learners. On this list here?
Yes, on that list there.
Where's
our co-constructive curriculum involving students?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely. I think the going back to the slide on curriculum and learners, like one of the aspirations we have in Scotland is we've got a curriculum which involves a high degree of choice, challenge, enjoyment, personalisation. So over time, the learner is much more engaged in designing their own curriculum. And certainly as you move through from age 3 to 18, as you progress closer to 18, the curriculum should be much more co-constructed with the teacher and the learner to meet individual interests, motivations, destinations. Where does the learner think that he or she is going after school? So yeah, that's a super question as well.
Okay, we're going to have to wrap it up there. Thank you very much, Laurie. Very brave. Good, it's fantastic. That was very good, nice skiing off the piece there, and then just like taking questions randomly. That was very brave.